Ross, I know that IBEW 37 is trying to court the shared services and holding employees at MB Power, asking them to join your union. I've been talking to some of them, and they have some concerns about that, so let's deal with that. First of all, one of them is that, look, unions by their very nature cater to the lowest common denominator. I don't want to be dragged down to that level because I see myself as a hard worker and smart and ambitious. Mm-hmm. That's a good point, isn't it?
I'd say that that is a traditional, strike against unions, but it's not the face of a modern union. It's certainly not the face of IBEW. We push the idea of excellence, about everybody advancing their skills, and we back that up with our training trust fund and other things that we've done. The International wants everybody to adhere to a high level of standards, and so we're not being drugged down, we're actually encouraging superior performance.
But by your very nature, you have to adhere to the people who are paying the bills, people who are paying their dues, member of the union. Maybe it's been a member of the union for 15, 20 years, but a little lazy.
Something, management needs to run their company effectively and efficiently, right? And our role is to make sure that they are being fair the way they treat people, right? So if they go through a proper process, they should be, doing what they need to do. We just make sure that fair rules are applied, but we're saying we want our members to be the best at what they do.
These folks are saying, look, I'm ambitious, I work hard, I don't want to be handicapped by being part of a union when it comes to, for example, promotions. They want it based on merit, where unions are all about seniority, right?
Well, if you look in our collective agreements that we have right now with MB Power, when they do, if they have a competition, selection for candidates is based on ability and qualifications. So that is based on merit. And it's when there's a tie, when there's a number of equally qualified people, then they go to seniority as a tiebreaker. But as far as promotion goes, I think being part of the IBEW is a big advantage. I've seen many times our members, people that have taken on leadership roles in the union, are the ones that get promoted into management positions because they've shown what they can do, and the backing we give them, and the leadership that we expect our members and our officers and stewards to employ helps them get jobs.
So why do we hear all the time that unions are about seniority?
Because it is important to have some rules. If you don't have any rules, it's just about picking and choosing and picking favorites sometimes. Nobody knows how it's done, right? And, in a non-union environment, maybe you get selected because you're friends with somebody. Maybe you don't get selected because you've stepped on somebody's toes. So it does create some rules, but, once again, in ours, it's ability and qualifications first, and seniority is used to break ties.
This perception that unions and management are always at odds. Is this some kind of unique relationship here, or is that the way things are going?
I would say that it is unique. I think we're cutting edge, IBEW and with MB Power. We know that the best way of ensuring job security and future jobs for our members is to run an efficient business. And we also know that if we spend all our time fighting, that we're not focused on how do we improve the process or how do we get better at what we do, right? And so many years ago, based first on a shared interest in trying to improve safety, we were able to work together, and I think from there we saw the value in working together in other things. And so it is quite unique. The relationship between Local 37 and MB Power is one of mutual respect. We want to work together. We want our businesses to be more successful, which works for our members and it works for the company as well.
Any employer, as you know, has the right to adjust the size of the workforce. Nothing any union, I think you'll agree, and nothing any union can do about that. So to go back to these folks who you're courting here, they could possibly be on the receiving end of maybe having to be laid off. So there's nothing that the union can do about that. So why would they join?
Well, unions cannot guarantee a job for life, but what they can do is they can put things in place like, how are people selected? They can talk to the employer to look for alternatives, and the fact is they're the voice for the employee. Without a union, you're on your own. With a union, you have somebody in your corner, working for you, and you're far better off in times like this having somebody speak up for you than you are on your own.
question as well that was brought up to me about whether the IBEW will be a good fit for them. And you've given a lot of reasons why they shouldn't be concerned about some of these things. But they're saying, look, we're white-collar workers, basically. We're professionals. We're IT professionals and other types of professionals. Whereas the union is a trades professionals union. So they don't see where it's a fit.
Well, you know, traditionally, that's where unions were. But, you know, modern unions have evolved. And, you know, our union, both internationally and locally, has a lot of white-collar workers. So we're very diverse. You know, we don't just represent electricians. You know, we have all sorts of other workers. Now, in 1996, all of the engineers in IBEW Power joined our union. The supervisors joined our union. So internally, we have a lot of, you know, white-collar workers. You know, externally, with IBEW internationally, we've got over 65,000 workers in the ICT industry, for example. You know, we've got many professional employees. Recently, the Attorney Generals in the state of New Jersey, about 150 of them, decided to join IBEW. So, you know, IBEW has a good experience of the white-collar workers. Also, you know, it's not uncommon. If you look at doctors, doctors are members of the union. They have their own union. It's called the Medical Association, negotiates their rates. So, you know, I think, you know, a lot of groups understand the value in being part of a larger group, and IBEW as a professional organization certainly represents a lot of white-collar workers, and we do here at Local 30.
There's concern about flex time, for example. If I join the union, it could negatively affect my flex time.
Well, we actually have provisions in our collective agreements with IBEW Power encouraging flex time and allowing it. So, you know, we've actually, you know, one of the groups that pushed for it many years ago. There's nothing in our contracts that prevent flex time. In fact, it's encouraged.
This is actually practiced?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of places. You know, it's got to be, you know, does the employee want to do it and is management okay with it based on the nature of their job? But, you know, where it works for both parties, it's absolutely allowed, and I see it happen many times.
So if you recruit these folks, they're going to have to pay dues as part of the union. But they wouldn't even have a contract yet. You know how long these things take, as well as anybody. It could take years before they get a contract. And in the meantime, they're paying dues. They're saying, well, geez, that's not a return on investment.
Yeah. No, they wouldn't be. Our policy is if we are successful in getting a new group to join us, we don't start charging dues until we have that first collective agreement in place and ratified. Okay, so there's no cost until that contract's in place. But there's another advantage. When a group is certified under the laws of this province, their existing terms and conditions of employment are frozen. In other words, the employer, once a group is certified, the employer cannot change their terms and conditions of employment. So they can't say we're going to take away a benefit, or we're going to reduce something, or we're going to change your hours of work. You know, what they have today, they'll remain in place until something new is negotiated. So, you know, that value in these changing times when, you know, things are a little bit up in the air, it's good to lock in what you have right now. And if they're certified tomorrow, what they have today will be locked in place until we negotiate that collective agreement.
So you've got this group that you're courting. You've made various points to them, and here in this interview as well. But still, there's some reluctance. Why do you think?
Actually, I'm encouraged. A lot of people are interested. I think that people, you know, are like you were doing, are asking some questions. They just want to know about it. But at the end of the day, I think people will see that we're the right choice. You know, we have a good track record of standing up for our members. We've got a good relationship with IBEW Power, being able to influence the workplace, you know, so it works for both the company and our members. And we've got a good track record of dealing with government on issues too. You know, it is in the hands of the workers there, but, you know, what we want to do is answer their questions. You know, I'm very inviting. I'd like to see them part of IBEW. I think they would be, I think any member of that group is better off, you know, part of the union than not. But at the end of the day, it will come down to, you know, their choice. But I'm encouraged by what we've received so far from people. And I just want to make sure that we're answering questions and, you know, having a good dialogue.
Well, you've answered some here, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem, thanks.